Our name is Ghosts Want You Dead. Join us as we continue our descent into a world dark night and shadows. What devilish truths might we uncover? And will the price of those truths be our sanity, or perhaps our very souls?
Welcome back to Ghosts Want You Dead. I'm Matthew.
I'm Rebecca.
You may have noticed last time that we're still sort of figuring out the whole formatting thing. I received criticism from my husband that I am too reliant on my outline document, which is true and true to my nature as a stereotypical Virgo. But we'll try and play it a little more fast and loose. Although I did end up typing just as much notes for this one as I did the last one. It's just in bullet points now instead of a straight up script. So here I am talking all free jazz. Whoop.
I know that is very out of your nature, which also I struggled with sticking to the script because I am a stereotypical weird, aloof Aquarius and I don't listen to nobody. So I am trying to stick closer to some notes I've written, and we will meet in the middle. Meet that old Georgia pine or something.
So last week we met the Collinses and we met Victoria Winters and we met Sam Malloy and Joe Haskell and Maggie Evans.
And little baby David of the Corn.
He is a Collins.
He is a Collins, yes.
Liz and Carolyn are Stoddards. Roger and David are Collinses.
It's hard to keep up already, and we haven't even met all the players.
No, I'm excited for things to come. There's a lady you're gonna love.
You keep saying that.
This is a new one. This is an additional lady that you're going to love.
I love how you keep telling me you're going to love this like in 2 springs from now.
I don't know. It won't take quite that long. I think by summertime, you will have met the first lady at least.
Soon I will just only watch Dark Shadows with you, and that will be our entire lives. And it sounds fine to me.
It's kind of fun watching it in opposing timelines where I'm still continuing to watch ahead up in the 300s. I think I'm on like 314 or 15.
And then going back and watching with me, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little confusing because when I go back and watch with you, I can't remember what has happened already. Ideally, we will separately watch the episodes during the week and then get together and record on the weekends.
That is the goal. I tend to be a procrastinator of all things, living with my unmitigated ADHD and general nature. And so I have intended to watch the episodes on my own and then have just, doom scrolled into the darkness and shadow of the actual world. So it would be good to take a little time.
Yes, I want you to embrace the ethos of this podcast and forget about the modern world and come live in 1966 with me and my pretend friends.
I'm game.
Neglect your child and your dogs and just live in Collinsport full time with me.
I would like to go to Maine. It would probably be too cold. That makes me think of all of the beautiful coastal island dilapidated houses that we send each other on the internet.
Yeah, we do tend to communicate mostly in spooky real estate listings back and forth.
And cute pictures of animals, of course.
Jumping back into the show with episode 6, Victoria reminds us that Collinwood is still creepy to the tune of "Here in the Darkness and the Dust of Hidden Years."
That sounds like the current state of my house.
Fair. I can relate. She goes on to talk about still searching for her family.
The episode opens with her going downstairs into a spooky hoarder basement looking for that terrible child. She's calling out for David of the Corn. Are you there? Presumably David is not there, but then a new figure appears.
Dun, dun, dun.
Holding a tire iron, I think, or a fire poker. His name was Matthew.
Morgan. Yes.
Matthew Morgan. Victoria Winters. That was how their introduction goes a little later on. He appears holding this fire poker, and he looks like he's going to beat her with it. He's yelling at her, asking, who the heck are you, basically? And he's sort of gives a grizzled old sea captain vibe, which I dig. I like him a lot.
You're going, well, I don't know. I didn't like this Matthew as much as I like Matthew number 2, who shows up around episode 35, I think. I hated him at first when they changed, but then I grew to appreciate his unique acting style. But we'll get to that soon. But in the meantime, we've met Matthew the caretaker. Earlier, when Liz mentioned they have the one servant to do the heavy work, that's Matthew. He's real enamored of Mrs. Stoddard and protective of her. So
yes, he does give the faithful guard vibe.
Scolding Vicky for getting in her business and snooping and such. Still down in the basement, Liz comes in and Vicky explains that she was just looking for David, but then Matthew snitches and is like, no, she was snooping around.
I felt like Liz was relatively cold with her, sort of icing her out about it, and sends her back upstairs and is essentially scolding her for snooping too, and was kind of standing on a hill of he wouldn't be down here. He wouldn't do that. Little David of the Corn was hiding in the corner.
In a crate. Which is a trick he pulls again later. After Liz has sent Vicky upstairs, she goes over and checks the door to this locked room, looking real suspicious, real shifty-eyed, and making sure that the door is locked. After that is when she finds David in the crate, and he continues to be a little shit. And throughout the show, Liz reminds him and also everyone else that nobody but her needs to go into the basement. While David's being a little shit, he's complaining that Vicky wants to hurt him and spy on him and find out things about him, and he also tries to get her in trouble for snooping, but Liz is very patient with him while not really taking him seriously. Back up in the drawing room is when Matthew and Vicky introduce themselves like James Bond to each other.
Matthew Morgan.
Now that they're not fighting anymore, she asks what the big deal is about being in the basement. This is when Matthew goes a little more into his fierce defense of Mrs. Stoddard and her privacy, and explains that she gave him a house and a job and lifted him out of poverty as a janitor at the cannery, which Liz owns, so she was the one paying him the wages which left him in poverty to begin with.
Oh, the heroes of enterprise.
Yeah, we capitalism. And he goes on to tell Vicky that Mrs. Stoddard fired all of the household staff when her husband left 18 years ago, and that's when she promoted Matthew out of the cannery and into her house. Back in the basement, Liz is looking around and gives David a children's book. The actress can't remember Matthew's name, so she's like, Martin Matthew.
Merlin.
was very funny, and they kept it in.
I loved it. I do enjoy it when they flub lines, but it was real fun. I did find that in this instance, David was being petulant about the book and doesn't want it. And in this scene, I do feel like he shows some genuine childhood fears, and for the first time seems like a human child with feelings, not just a evil devil of the corn spawn.
Yeah, I didn't get that impression. I read it as he's still just a little shit and he's being sad about his mother, mother, and that she's gone. So Liz tries to comfort him and explains that, well, she isn't well and that's why she's not around. And she reassures him that Vicky is not trying to replace his mother.
Mother.
That's a good song.
It is a good song.
Liz is trying to comfort David and explains that, well, his mother isn't well and that's why she's not around. She assures him that Vicky is not trying to replace mother. She goes on to tell David Vicky's tragic orphan backstory as if to say, well, she didn't have parents, so she wouldn't try and get in the way of the relationship between someone and their parents.
Well, her name is Victoria, and she is a spooky, sad baby, as we hear many times.
It's true. Back in the drawing room, Carolyn comes in looking for Liz. She asks Vicky if she's asked Liz about this mysterious orphan money that started turning up 18 years ago, and Vicky has not done that yet. Carolyn encourages her to get on with it and be more assertive. Liz comes in and shoos Carolyn away, telling Vicky ominously that they have many things to discuss. So Carolyn goes out to the hall to talk to Dreamy Joe on the phone, and they make plans for him to come over. Back in the drawing room with the doors closed, Liz is scolding Vicky that it's her fault somehow that David is afraid of her and it's up to her to win him over. Vicky asks if Liz knows anything about her past. She asks about the money and she's being pretty hostile and pushy about it. Like she pretty quickly goes from all sweetness and innocence to interrogating her. And I thought that was fun.
Yeah, she does appear to be getting a little bit over the whole, like, I know there's something going on here, so come on, out with it. But Liz continues to feign ignorance, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I read it a little bit like maybe Vicky isn't a big faker, concealing her intentions with her nice, friendly, slow-speaking, monotone delivery. Maybe she was just taking Carolyn's advice, because Carolyn had just been like, you gotta ask her,
Just get it,
find out
yeah.
what you want. You gotta be assertive about it. So maybe that's why she's such a bitch about asking her questions.
Aggressive.
That's funny.
Get in there, girl.
Liz gives the same old somebody recommended you to Roger story, and Vicky still isn't buying it. Liz gets sort of icy and is insistent about her clearly fake story being true, and then she scurries away out of the room to avoid any further questioning.
I took that as gracefully storming out. She was just like, I'm done with this. I shall not be bothered, and just whisked herself away.
That might be a product of my having watched way more of the show. It is a pattern that whenever someone steers the conversation in a direction she doesn't like, she scurries away.
She just gets out. Yeah. Well, it's a way to shut it down, I guess.
I relate to that.
Sure.
I have a similar approach.
Victoria starts to call her orphan marm on the phone after Liz leaves. And then Carolyn comes in, so she immediately hangs up.
Yeah, and then Carolyn knows what she's up to and offers to lend Vicky her car so she can go into town to call the foundling home and check up on Liz's story. That's episode 6. episode 7, Victoria reminds us that, in case you were wondering, yes, it is still creepy at Collinwood and she's still searching for answers.
The episode begins with Sam Evans going back to his shabby little house.
It's cute, right?
It's a great little artist cottage. And he, of course, pours himself a drink as immediately when he gets in and starts talking to himself, because that's what alcoholics do. He starts to pour this drink, but then Roger is already in his house. Of course, he is alarmed by that.
And Roger is immediately a dick.
Oh,
He's
absolutely.
ambushed him in his own house and just
Yes.
steps right in with being his normal dickish self.
Yes. So Sam evades Roger's badgering and goes on to engage in a lot of misanthropic ramblings this entire scene, as though he's channeling the spirit of Werner Herzog. And then he raises a toast to him and Roger to the long and unhappy, miserable life that lies ahead for both of us. That was more Dracula. Like
it was
Werner
funny,
Herzog
though.
meets Dracula, but we might keep it. I will also note that when making my notes, instead of typing Werner Herzog, I did type Werner Hotdog.
I do like that a lot.
So he does his toast and proceeds to be a sad, washed up old artist. And I kind of love Sam and identify with him a good deal, being an old, sad, washed up artist.
I also like the second Sam better, and I am looking very forward to you meeting him, as I have a trivia item in my back pocket. Sam is being pretentious and drunk like he is a lot, and he and Roger are talking about Bert Devlin being back in town, and they're nervous about why he might be there and vaguely allude to a mysterious revenge he might be seeking for something, and Roger's being real paranoid. From there, we head over to the Collinsport Inn, where Maggie is serving coffee and donuts to Burke Devlin, and he doesn't recognize her from when he was last in town 10 years ago.
Maggie's like, "Oh, please, won't you say how I've grown?" And he looks at her boobs and is like, "My, how you've grown," because everyone is creepy in the
Look at her
1960s.
boobs. I
felt like you
boobs
did.
are a blind spot for me.
Sure.
You were talking about the pointy boobs in the Blue Whale, and I hadn't noticed, and now I didn't notice this.
Yeah, the bullet bras were all the rage. I don't think Maggie was wearing a bullet bra, but somehow Devlin was being a creep anyhow, because it was the 1960s, as we've said.
They're being friendly, and they talk about the trial, which, has that come up yet? Do you know anything about that?
No?
Okay, I thought it was maybe just a vague mention. We'll find out about that soon, I guess. But yes, like you mentioned, they do also make it seem a little flirty between Burke and Maggie, and also Burke and every lady when he's like 50 and these are 18 to 20-year-old girls, but they all have a crush on this old man who is not ugly, but isn't super attractive. So I just thought that was interesting. Maggie is teasing her about ghosts and goblins up at Collinwood. Vicky doesn't really respond to that and just gets change for the phone booth
Yeah,
to
she
make
just
her
wants to go make her call.
call to her mom. While she's away, Maggie is gossiping to Burke about, ooh, how weird that Vicky lives up at Collinwood where it's spooky and there's ghosts. Now we head back over to the Evanses. Sam tells Roger that he had gone up to Collinwood and talked to Vicky on the cliff. And Roger's super pissed that he did this and is like, you're never supposed to come there. And we don't know why. So that's spooky.
Yes, he was on the cliff talking about the ghosts with Vicky, calling Collinswood the ghost-ridden house of tears, which is what I'm going to call my vagina from now on.
Oh my. Well,
Victoria,
anyway,
back at the
Rod,
hotel.
well, Roger leaves to go track down Vicky. He needs to find out what Sam said to her, I guess. Back at the inn, Vicky's trying to call Orphan Marm. The phone is busy. As she's leaving the phone booth, Burke intercepts her and they end up having coffee together.
At his insistence, because he is, gross and pushy like all men of the era.
But at first, trying to do it in a nice, friendly way. So he's flirty and is trying to dismiss people's weird
Right.
fear of him. And it starts out nice, but then he starts aggressively interrogating her about the family and her past and all kinds of stuff. And so she's not into it and tries to leave, but he switches back to being flirty on a dime and she ends up staying. But
Yeah.
then he continues to question her about the Collinses and Roger specifically.
Yeah, I thought that was weird that he kept shifting between smooth talking her into being pals and yelling at her. But
And that she's falling for it.
yeah, exactly.
Like, that doesn't paint her in a good light. I think I've just realized that maybe my impression of that was misogynistic because I was thinking, oh, they're painting her like some dumb little girl who's just willing to put up with this kind of behavior. But it's just as likely that she's playing the same game he is and, trying to be nice and flirty, but also find out, why are all these people scared of you? What's the deal with you disappearing for 10 years and coming back and freaking people out? So
Right.
maybe she thinks he's just as obnoxious as we do, but she's tolerating it in the interest of getting information.
True. I will say that there does seem to be the general theme of obvious manipulation, like just very obvious manipulation for a lot of the characters.
That is true. While they're having this exchange and questioning each other flirtily, Maggie goes out into the hallway for something and runs into Roger in the hall. He tells her that he's looking for Vicky and she gives her up immediately and is like, oh, she's just right in there having coffee with Burke. And instead of storming in, Roger gets scared and like tiptoe sneaks out of the inn and runs away with his tail between his legs.
Yeah, he had a look of horror on his face.
Back at the table, Vicky and Burke are still talking about Collinwood being haunted.
And clam chowder.
Very important point.
Yes.
And he's telling her a story about how back when he was a kid, he snuck in because it is the town spooky haunted house that all the kids talk about and how he got in trouble for sneaking in there. Vicky is not scared and says she doesn't believe in ghosts, and he implies that, well, maybe she should be scared. Then Maggie comes back in and lets Vicky know that Roger was just looking for her and left when he was told that she was with Burke. Maggie goes on to warn Burke that her dad is a drunk. He's headed over to the Evanses'.
He also seemed very surprised at that fact. Like, really? Sam's a drunk? Like, Sam drinks now? What?
Yeah, this is a development that has happened since Burke left town.
Yeah. Back to the Evanses', where old Sam Hartzog is having his existential crisis drinking session, talking to himself again, saying, the trouble with you, Sam, is that you don't exist at all.
Yeah, I didn't recall that.
It tickled me, mainly because I talk to myself a lot when I'm at home alone, wandering the dark and dusty halls.
Yeah, so anyway, Maggie calls to check in on him and also lets him know Burke is on the way. He gets a little panicky, so Burke gets there and does not receive the warm welcome he was expecting because last he knew, he and Sam were friends. Sam is being pretentious and dramatic and drunk still.
And Burke seems to be genuinely concerned about Sam. A lot of the conversations he's had with all of these other people seem overtly manipulative and Maybe I'm perceiving things differently, but much like David having a moment of humanity, I also saw that in Burke, where he's like, oh, my old friend is a drunk. That's sad.
Well, and also, like, why is he being so weird? We were cool last time.
Right. Like, what's the deal?
Burke is being friendly, and he says he's just come back to visit his old hometown, and Sam shoos Burke out and then dramatically breaks a glass.
Yeah, they had had more fun with the sugar glass that day. Vicky finally gets her phone call in and wants to talk to the orphan marm, and it's very important. Episode 8, Devils of a Forgotten Time. That was just a line that I enjoyed. I don't remember the rest, but she said something
about Collinwood is creepy,
Yes.
and she still wants to know about her past.
Yes.
At Collinwood, upstairs in Vicky's room, Liz comes in to dramatically shut the windows as an excuse to snoop, and she finds the letter that Vicky received from the foundling home and reads it. Carolyn catches her in the act and inquires why Liz hired Vicky specifically rather than someone local. Liz also gives Carolyn the, well, somebody there recommended her to Roger story.
Carolyn tells on Vicky and says that she thinks Vicky has called the orphan marm, and Liz is like, oh, dip, I'm caught. Like her face was like, oh, no.
Now they both think that she's gone to check up on the story, and back at the hotel, Vicky is doing just that. Orphan Marm confirms that nobody recommended her to Roger. No one at the foundling home has ever heard of Roger or any of the Collinses prior to the letter with the job offer arriving. Back in the drawing room, Carolyn is wondering why Joe insisted on coming over when I think they had initially planned to go out. Liz is being real mysterious about Vicky and dramatically staring out the window again. She's wondering out loud if it was a mistake to bring Vicky to Collinwood.
Yeah, it cut to Liz staring out the window with this sour expression in a spooky shot with this wisteria in the foreground, and I thought that was a neat cinematic feature.
You do love your plants.
I do love plants. I was like, that's wisteria. That's just the game I play when I watch things. Later on, I'll tell you about the same thing because there's more plants that I identified.
Cool. This conversation is a weird back and forth, and so Liz is
thinking out loud and wondering if it was a mistake to bring Vicky to Collinwood because she looks in the shadows, the dark shadows. And Carolyn's sad at the idea of her leaving.
It seems like Liz is going to fire her. She immediately turns because Carolyn doesn't want her to leave. And they're also, I guess, vaguely talking about maybe this hasn't happened yet, where there's an implication that Carolyn needs to move out and marry Joe. Liz is reassuring Carolyn that, well, you know, I brought Vicky here to hang out with me in addition to caring for David, so you're free to just get on with your life and move out, you know, like I'll be all right, even though she was just about to fire her.
There does seem to be a lot of back and forth and no one's mind's being made up in this show so far for dramatic effect.
Yes. And also, I think we're in the middle of the second afternoon now.
Yes. That's episode 8 at 2:00. And Joe arrives with flowers for Liz and Carolyn, anemones for Liz. Ooh. And as he says, little yellow roses for Carolyn.
As he comes in, he is being adorable and like tiptoe sneaks up behind Carolyn and greets her with a boo because ghosts. You know?
Yeah.
Carolyn is snippy and wants to know why he's there and is just being kind of mean. until he reveals that at work, Mr. Malloy has promoted him off of the fishing boats and into the office, which comes with a $25 a week raise, which in today money would be about $250 a week more. So then Carolyn is excited for him and they talk about future plans and Joe buying a boat and quitting the Collins fishery and starting his own fishing fleet. Carolyn professes her love, and then Joe proposes, not for the first time, they reveal. And then Carolyn is resistant, not for the first time.
And she pulls away, and then he is disheartened, which is sad. Poor Joe. I was thinking earlier in the scene when at first he's trying to be sweet and kiss her, Carolyn is avoiding it. Made the joke to myself that it's because, he's not her sexy uncle. But then it does appear that she does have genuine feelings for Joe, which to me, this was the first time that that's really been indicated because she's just sort of seemed disinterested in him until this scene.
We'll see about that.
Oh.
She treats my boyfriend Joe bad.
Oh,
I'm mad at her about it, even though Carolyn is probably my favorite Collins.
She's pretty great, but I know you love Joe.
I do. Would it sweeten you towards him to know that he was a Broadway actor and out homosexual and was in Torch Song Trilogy with Harvey Fierstein?
Yes.
And then died of AIDS in the 80s?
Yes, it does soften me to poor Joe.
Now do you love him?
That Caroline with her mini skirts and bullet bras tramping around.
Liz comes in and Joe tells her about the promotion, and Liz and Carolyn exchange looks that make it obvious that, oh, you did this, didn't you, Mom?
Yeah.
Joe also starts to get a little bit suspicious, but Liz insists that no, it was Malloy's idea, and she just agreed with it. Then she goes too far and is like, and it'll make it easier for you to get married, confirming that this was her plan.
The setup all along.
Carolyn is pissed, but Joe is not, because he's like, yeah, let's do that. Let's get married.
Could we please?
Carolyn is pissed and storms out and leaves Joe and Liz alone in the drawing room. And as she's back in the foyer on her way upstairs, Vicky gets home and avoids seeing Liz. Carolyn's being a bitch because she's mad at Joe and her mom, and she has a real habit of directing her anger at the wrong people, which we will see over the coming weeks.
I know how that goes.
She admits to Vicky that she's scared to leave Collinwood and that she does kind of want to marry Joe, but whenever it comes up, she freaks out. Back in the drawing room, Joe laments that this happens every time he proposes, and this is the same old song and dance. He goes on to ask Liz about Burke Devlin, and tattle on him that Burke offered to bribe him to spy on the Collinses. Carolyn comes back and now she's happy again, but Liz tells her to mind her business and goes off to find Vicky and find out about her phone call, and now everything's fine again. Upstairs, Liz confronts Vicky about the phone call and Vicky admits to it. Vicky accusingly tells Liz that nobody at the Foundling home knows anything about her or Roger aside from that letter, and they argue a little bit.
She does seem to stick with her lie for a while.
Yeah, and Liz insists that somebody really did recommend her to Roger for the job. We cut back to the Foundling home where Orphan Marm is dictating a letter stating that after she and Vicky spoke on the phone earlier, a man came to the Foundling home initially pretending to be a journalist, but then revealing himself to be a detective, in fact, Strake, who is working for Burke Devlin, and he had asked the very same questions that Vicky previously did. So Orphan Marm asks if Vicky knows who might have hired a detective to check up on her.
I think Orphamar would make a very good bitch detective.
I agree. What was her name again? Because
Goodwell, Honeywell, Honey Pot.
I've only been
Good
thinking of her as Orphan Marm since you've said that.
means well.
Well, Orphan Marm does mean well.
Orphamar, bitch detective. On to episode 9. We open with Victoria reminding us once again that Collinwood is spooky. However, there are an added spooky seagulls into the mix this time, which remind me of the spooky, sexy, grisly lighthouse movie with Willem Dafoe and that feller from the Twilights.
I do enjoy that movie, even though they're cowards, because there was initially a lot more dick in the movie, but they took it out. From there, yeah, it goes back to the Collinsport Inn, and Bill Malloy has arrived. And from the lobby on the house phone, he calls Burke Devlin's room and invites himself up for a little chat. Burke does not agree. Back at Collinwood, Liz is coming out of the drawing room with her hands full of a tea tray, sets it down as Malloy knocks on the door, and Liz leads him into the drawing room, and they close the door as if they're going to talk about something private, and the music gets real mysterious. As they enter, Malloy calls his secretary to tell her where he is if he should need to be reached, which I just thought was a fun reminder that we're in bygone times before cell phones and we had to call and let people know where we were.
Gosh, those were the days.
Indeed. And while we're on reminders about the past, a not so fun reminder that we're still in the 60s is the complete lack of diversity in casting. So far, I am on, as I said, episode, I think 315, and every person we have encountered up to that point is white.
Yep. Everyone? That's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not wild for the 60s, but it's
the only
wild.
hint of any sort of diversity in that regard is when actually it's coming up. I don't think we've talked. Yeah, we haven't talked about it yet. Sorry, like I said, I forget what happened when. Malloy tells Liz that he tried to see Burke, but Burke would not see him. And Carolyn comes in. It comes up in conversation. Malloy tells her that the man who threatened to spank her at the Blue Whale the night before was, in fact, Burke Devlin.
Carolyn is hot for Burke.
Well, Carolyn is hot for any dude that is over 40, it seems.
Especially if they're a relative. Yes, she was very excited to hear that that was Burke, and her eyes lit up, and she was delighted.
Carolyn wanders out to fantasize about old men, which, I can relate to that.
Yeah, same.
While she's away, Malloy urges Liz to marry her off and get her out of Collinwood, and he warns of all the coming doom and gloom that Burke Devlin is bringing. Malloy goes on to question if Burke even committed the crime that he was sent to prison for, which I don't know if that's the first time we're hearing this.
I believe it's been mentioned that he's been to prison. I think it has been insinuated that he did time and that it was clearly there was some sort of taking the fall for Rogers, sort of what's been insinuated.
Well, we'll talk a lot more about that a lot later. But Malloy assures Liz that they'll work together and thwart whatever plans that Burke Devlin has. Upstairs, Carolyn stops by Vicky's room, and this time it's Carolyn's turn to stare dramatically out the window like her mom. She spookily announces that 3 people have jumped off the nearby cliff to their deaths. Oh, by the way, they were all governesses. She says there's a legend that another governess is destined to jump and join them. And Carolyn thinks that Vicky has been fired and is leaving, so that's why she's being a bitch and trying to scare her, I guess, because she's mad that she's leaving and misdirecting her anger.
See, I interpreted that as being playful, but I suppose it was maybe meant to be a little malevolent.
Yeah, I thought she was just trying to freak her out because she's mad at her mom.
Sure.
uh, and when she finds out that Vicky has not been fired, she's happy to learn that, but continues to try and scare her a little bit more, but ultimately gives up. Carolyn wants to talk about her boy problems some more, so she is again lamenting her cowardice at being unable to accept Joe's proposal and leave Collinwood, but then goes on when she finds out that Vicky has had coffee with Burke, absolutely grill her about him and tell me everything about him because I clearly have a boner for him.
Yeah, she's hot for Burke.
Downstairs, Malloy and Liz are still talking about Burke. Malloy speculates that Burke is out to steal everything the Collinses own. He wants the house and the business and the town.
The sardines.
Right at that moment, there's a knock at the door, and the music gets real suspenseful like as Liz slowly creeps forward to answer the door. Who could it be? She opens the door and no one is there. However, a teacup from the tray that Liz set down earlier to let Malloy in is now broken on the floor in the foyer. She jokes with Malloy about ghosts having broken the cup before accusing David. She's pleased as punch about it. She says she's happy that it was just David dicking around instead of Burke Devlin knocking on the door because they both had assumed that's who it was. Liz declares that she doesn't plan to proactively do anything about Burke being there and sends Malloy home.
Then we cut to a giggling Carolyn saying that Burke sounds dreamy. She's asking lots of questions. Victoria says that Burke is charming, but seems a little dangerous, maybe a little unhinged, and that he was asking lots of questions about the family, particularly sexy Uncle Roger.
From downstairs, Liz summons Carolyn to come down and say goodbye to Mr. Malloy. Before she goes downstairs, Carolyn hornily reveals that Burke had threatened to paddle her the night before.
Carolyn seems excited by the idea of getting paddled by Burke and has cast Joe aside in her mind and wants to go to town for some light S&M.
As Carolyn comes downstairs, Malloy is finishing up a phone call where he's trying to arrange sending Carolyn away on a vacation with his niece in a ploy to get her out of town before Burke Devlin does anything bad. As Carolyn comes downstairs, she solicitously offers to mail the letter that Vicky is writing with plans that are clear to us and to Vicky that she just wants to go into town so she can see Burke. And Vicky calls her out on it, which is funny.
Yeah.
And then she's trying to prevent it. So Carolyn's like, oh, well, I have to go by the hotel to pick up a stamp for your letter. And so Vicky goes and gets a stamp.
She says, here's your stamp, ho.
Now you don't have to go see that hot old man that's mean and hot. And so she heads downstairs, and Malloy pitches the trip to Carolyn, but she sees it for the ploy that it is immediately. And Malloy calls her princess. It's less gross than Roger calling her kitten, but it's still a little bit gross. I don't know. Did you think so?
Yes, I had an evolution about it. At first, I felt like, oh, well, terms of endearment for your, employer's daughter and that you've been around and known since she was a kid, sure, princess. That's at least a little bit better than the creepy kitten thing. But he says it so many times and then has his own moments of creepiness that I was just like, no, that's creepy too.
Anyway, Carolyn asks Malloy for a ride into town, which puzzles me because she has a car, and if he gives her a ride, how's she going to get back? But I also don't really know how far it is from the house into town. Once Carolyn arrives at the inn, she does drop Vicky's letter in the mailbox, but calls Burke's room from the house phone and invites herself up for a visit to a suspenseful musical cue. And Becca was gobsmacked when that happened.
I was.
You were like, ooh, girl.
Oh, she was just like, may I come up? Like she was gonna go.
Thus concludes episode 9.
Episode 10, Victoria reminds us that Collinwood is creepy and tells us about the dusty smell of fear. In creeps little David of the Corn, peering through the doors and creeping around.
You know, I think he's more David of the Damned rather
That's,
than
oh
David
God
of the
damn it.
Corn.
I've just been saying it wrong. Like, you're right that now we have to record the entire episode over.
No, we don't. I'm leaving that in because it was funny.
Formerly, David of the Corn, now known as David of the Damned, is creeping around.
He's doing like the tiptoe, raised hands, creep walk, and he peeks through the crack in the door into the drawing room, and the phone starts to ring, and he looks like he's about to bolt upstairs. But then when he hears his Aunt Elizabeth coming down, he scurries over and hides in the corner, kind of behind a chair, like it's a earthquake drill or something.
Sure.
Yeah. Liz does come down to answer the phone, and it's Roger looking for Vicky, and he's desperate to do so. Liz says something like, "I will not lock her in her room."
Right.
After the phone call, Aunt Liz does a cool mom with eyes in the back of her head trick, and without turning around from the phone addresses David, and I thought that was fun.
No, that was great, and she knows he's hiding and calls him out.
She
Oh, no.
accuses him of
Yes.
breaking the cup, and David claims that ghosts did it, and he saw the ghosts do it, and he saw with his eyes the cup floating into the air, traveling a distance and falling.
And then gaslighting Liz says that doesn't happen that way. And David's like, nah, bitch, it floated. Like,
And we
You're
don't
lying.
know because David's a little shit and makes things up, but there could be ghosts. We haven't seen evidence of a ghost
this is true.
yet.
There might be ghosts, there might not.
David scurries upstairs and we head back to the hotel. While Carolyn is on the way up to his room, Burke hurriedly calls down to the front desk and asks for a reminder call in half an hour. And then he pointedly starts to sit down. Then, oh, I thought of something, and goes into his briefcase and arranges some papers on the sofa in plain view that he clearly wants Carolyn to see.
Yes, he is setting this scene up very perfectly. Like, he has this whole master plan.
He sets the stage and then puts on his jacket and lets Carolyn in and accuses her of coming to check out the monster, which she sort of admits to. She's like, well, yeah, I mean, everybody's so afraid of you, so I thought I'd come see what that was all about. He encourages her very obviously to not sit in the armchair that she initially chose, but no, you sit on the sofa.
You'll be more comfy
you'll
on the sofa.
Yeah, right conveniently by those papers that I put there for you to read. Carolyn gets down to business and wants to know why Uncle Roger is so afraid of him, and this cracks Burke up, but he doesn't answer. He's evasive and flirty, and then insists that Roger has nothing to be scared of. Burke goes to the kitchen for a drink, even though she declines, and stays long enough to allow her to snoop and read the papers that he planted. She takes the bait,
Yeah.
Binks. But he comes back and catches her in the act and is clearly pleased about it. He's all smiles.
Yes, he's grinning malevolently from the kitchen.
It's framed in such a way that he's still behind Carolyn, so we still see her snooping and him looming over her in the background smiling. But when he comes back in, she immediately reveals that she did read the paper, which we learn indicates he's leaving to go to Venezuela to negotiate a business deal that will make him $500,000, which in today money
Is $5 million.
is $5 million. Burke convincingly acts like he's mad that she was snooping, and he implores her not to reveal the details of this deal knowing and hoping that that's exactly what she'll do, perhaps causing Roger to lower his guard and think he's just in town for a few days to visit.
Presumably, yeah. Then they toast to the death of the monster.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
You've got a good memory for toasts.
I do like a good toast.
Back at Collinwood, David is in the drawing room playing with a toy robot that made me think of the one from one of the Poltergeist movies. I think it was Poltergeist 2, maybe?
I think it was
Anyway, we brought up Poltergeist last time, so now I'm compelled to try and work it in every time.
It's a great franchise. Well, a great movie, and then just nostalgic.
They each have their charms. Although I will say, when I was a kid, both my sister and I thought that Poltergeist 2 was really good. And it turns out it's fucking awful. Like, that is the worst entry in the franchise and is racist and doesn't make sense. And we sure liked it when we were kids, though.
So this is a difference between Matthew and I in that he was raised like the majority of our generation where he grew up watching a lot of these classic horror movies. And I was raised in a very fundamentalist, culty, homeschool marm way. I didn't really get into horror movies until my late teens, early 20s.
And then when you had kids, you became a loser and didn't like horror movies anymore.
Something weird happened in where I was pregnant with my oldest child and became physically ill at the sight of gore. My ex-husband and I went to the 28 weeks later, or 2,800 hours, and there was this helicopter scene where all the zombies got all slaughtered up and I was physically ill. And after that, I think I just resensitized myself to it. And it took me a long time to want to watch horror movies again. Now I dabble, but I prefer a psychological thriller.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yes. Nobody will watch scary movies with me. Okay. When Roger enters, David hides behind a piece of furniture like he likes to do. He creeps behind a chair. So Roger pours himself a drink as Liz comes in, and they're talking about the fact that Vicky had coffee with Burke Devlin. Roger clearly thinks that they're somehow in league with one another and plotting his downfall, and he questions Liz's motivations for hiring Vicky, while also letting slip that David's a little shit and should be institutionalized.
Which I was horrified at.
Not me. I was like, yeah, tell him.
Get him.
Uncle Roger. Get that little shit out of here.
Oh, no.
Liz exposits that 10 years ago, after the trouble with Burke, Roger had left town and she paid him a monthly stipend to stay away, asserting that now he's back and it's her house and she's in charge. She goes on to defend David and say he's the only reason she even allowed Roger to come back to Collinwood. Again, she leaves the room because that's what she does when a conversation is uncomfortable. And then, of course, David's toy robot makes a noise, revealing him hiding behind the chair. And Roger is pretty mean, but David is pretty awful. So
I don't know. He grabs him and is like, it was uncomfortable for me to watch. And then David saying, "You're not going to send me away." And he says, "Liz is going to send you away." Which
David is being a little shit and gloating that Roger can't do anything about him because Liz is in charge. And David goes on to mention he remembers his mother saying that somebody was going to send Roger away because of whatever happened with Burke Devlin. And they argue, and Roger does grab and shake horrible little David of the Damned.
It was alarming and abusive. Like, I was not enjoying watching it.
It was the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
And
everything goes in the 60s.
You can threaten to spank young women you've never met, and everybody's cool with it. So I think it's okay if you grab and shake your terrible little child sometimes.
Wow.
But at any rate, Liz doesn't think so. She intervenes and sends David upstairs. And before he leaves, he shouts at his dad, "I hope Burke Devlin comes back, and I hope he gets even with you. I hope he gets even." He likes to repeat things twice. It's fun.
I mean, sometimes you gotta, for emphasis.
that wraps up that confrontation. But back at the end, Burke and Carolyn are still chit chatting, and she's surprised she doesn't remember Burke from 10 years ago because back then he and Roger were close friends. And right at this moment, the call from the front desk that Burke had requested earlier comes in, and he pretends that it's a call from Jose, his imaginary partner in Venezuela, performatively indicating that, yes, he's going to be leaving Collinsport in a couple of days and coming down to do whatever business they need to do about their business. And this is what I was referring to earlier when, like, this is the only hint of a not white person that has occurred in 300 some episodes of the show, is Burke making up an imaginary Venezuelan. Carolyn admits that she was kind of suspicious of the obviously planted letter ploy. He was not being as slick as he thought he was, but then he goes on to convince her. He gaslights her into it and is like, no, you don't believe me? Well, call the switchboard and they'll tell you that that was a real live call from Venezuela, which I thought was suspicious. Like, how would they confirm that?
Sure. Well, I mean, he knew she wouldn't. He was being very brazen in his manipulation and just kind of mind fucking her and assuming this arrogance that worked. So,
well, she'll take the fucking from Burt Devlin any way she can.
She absolutely will. She is just ready.
After he's sure that he's convinced her that he really is leaving town, they resume flirting, and we go back to the drawing room at Collinwood where, oh, you liked this part. Back in the drawing room, Liz is dozing on the settee, mumbling about ghosts. She's like, something about ghosts. There aren't any ghosts. There aren't any ghosts.
Ghosts? There are no ghosts here. Ghosts. It was great. And then her eyes flutter open and land on David, who has blood or chocolate or something on his face.
I think it's just meant to be dirt.
It does not look like dirt, but I guess that is, in fact, what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, he's standing over her and she's startled and he is filthy dirty. And I think he says he was out on the beach or something, which beach makes one think sand, which would not make your clothes dirty like that.
Sure.
I don't know.
But I mean, it looked like he had it like around his mouth. And like,
I was on the beach eating dirt because nobody loves me and my hot dad wants to send me away.
He asks where the ghosts are.
They talk a little bit about ghosts, and they also talk a little bit about Burke. He's curious about him because he has that vague memory of his mother mentioning him. During this conversation, David is hiding something behind his back, and when Liz asks to see it, he runs away. And at this point, Carolyn returns home and to everyone's surprise brings Burke right along with her. And in he comes to the foyer, and Liz's eyes get real big and the music gets dramatic, and that is episode 10, folks.
And that wraps us up. Did you have any subsequent thoughts about our 5-episode stretch this time?
None that I can really say at this point. It's a bunch of, oh, I look forward to telling you about this thing that's going to happen to this person a little later on.
Sure.
But we're still, again, this is still just the evening of the second day. So there hasn't been the opportunity for a whole lot to happen.
The entire series takes place over the course of 3 weeks.
Right now, we're still just meeting everybody and being suspicious of everybody, and things will eventually begin to happen. Although there was one thing that I can't tell you about, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about. There's a thing that is said in like episode 1 or 2, and it doesn't pay off until like episode 280.
Oh, wow.
Like they call back to a thing that happened in the first couple of episodes. I'm like, wow, they're really playing the long game there.
Yeah, they're really paying attention. Some of it seems off the cuff, and maybe that's due to some of the acting choices or chops that are going on. The idea that the writing is that planned out, that there is a web of mysteries and shadows. Dark shadows.
It might not have been that planned out. Like they could have retroactively decided, oh, that's why that thing that happened back then happened. But
Sure, yeah.
I still I was surprised at how long they let that plot point hang. And someday I can tell you all about it.
Well, not yet.
Not today, though.
Not today.
I cannot tell you a thing except for goodbye.
Goodbye.
Now say it spooky.
Goodbye.
Now say it sexy.
Goodbye, Uncle Roger.
Now say it vacant and monotone and slow.
Goodbye, dear listeners. Goodbye. I don't know.